The small town of Maple Ridge had always been a place where everyone knew each other's names, a town where life moved at a steady pace, and peace lingered in the air. But something had changed in the past few weeks. People started noticing a large German shepherd on the outskirts of town, a shadow in the distance. She was always seen alone, wandering the hills at dawn and dusk, as if searching for something, or perhaps someone. The dog had a rugged, unkempt coat, and her eyes seemed to tell a story of pain, loss, and betrayal. At first, the locals assumed she was a stray. People would leave out scraps of food and water, but no one was able to get close to her. Every time someone attempted to approach, she would back away, her ears flattened against her head, eyes wide with distrust. She didn't bark, didn't growl. She simply disappeared into the woods, vanishing as if she were a ghost. The townspeople began to whisper about the mysterious dog. There were murmurs about her past, each version more tragic than the last. Some said she was abandoned by her owner when they moved away. Others believed she had run from an abusive situation. The more people tried to help, the more the dog pushed them away. It was clear that something had happened to her, something that had left a scar too deep to heal easily. The dog's fear was palpable, an invisible wall she had built around herself. She was wary of the world and everything in it. But one thing was for certain. This was a dog who had known pain. The townspeople would talk about her in the mornings as they gathered at the local cafe, exchanging theories and speculating. Poor thing, Mrs. Green, the elderly woman who lived on Maple Street, would say as she sipped her tea. She's been abandoned. I can see it in her eyes. I've seen her before, said Mr. Wallace, the postman. She's been around for a couple of weeks now, but every time I try to get near her, she takes off. She's just too scared. I think she's been hurt by someone. There was always a collective sigh whenever the dog was mentioned, an unspoken understanding that there was little they could do. People wanted to help, but how do you help an animal that trusts no one? How do you break through the invisible wall of fear that surrounded her? The dog continued to haunt the town's edges, a reminder that not all wounds could be seen, and not all pain could be healed with a simple gesture. But something in the air seemed to shift as the days grew colder. People didn't know it yet, but a change was coming. And it would come from the most unexpected source. As the days passed, the dog's presence became a topic of conversation wherever people gathered. The quiet streets of Maple Ridge hummed with gossip, and everyone seemed to have their own version of the story. The town, small and close-knit, had always prided itself on its sense of community. But in the case of the German shepherd, it was clear that no one truly knew what had happened to her or why she had come to roam the hills alone. Have you seen her? Mrs. Green asked Mrs. Thompson one morning as they sat on the porch, watching the mist rise over the valley. That poor dog, I swear, she's been left behind. Someone dumped her, I just know it. I heard she used to belong to a family up near the old mill. Mrs. Thompson replied, her voice low as though she was passing on a secret. But when they moved away, they just left her there. I don't think she's ever forgiven them. She's never been the same since. The rumors varied from one person to the next. Some believed she had been abused by a previous owner who had mistreated her, while others swore she had escaped from a cruel situation. There were even whispers that she had once been part of a police or military K-9 unit and had grown distrustful of humans after being retired. The more time that passed, the more stories began to blur together, and soon it was hard to tell where the truth ended and the speculation began. The dog's story seemed to change with each telling, but one thing was certain: no one knew how to reach her. No matter how much food was left, no matter how many people stood at the hill's edge calling her name, the German shepherd never came close. She would always watch from a distance, her dark eyes filled with uncertainty, before retreating into the woods. I saw her again yesterday, said Tim, the local mechanic, to a group of men at the town's only bar. She was by the creek. Looked like she was trying to drink, but every time she heard a noise, she'd dart off into the trees. Poor thing, scared of her own shadow. Maybe she's just wild, offered Jake, the farmer who lived at the edge of town. Could be she's been living like that for too long. Animals like that don't trust easily. But deep down, many of the townspeople knew that it wasn't just wildness. It was something far deeper, something broken inside the dog. There was a collective sadness that hung over the town like a cloud, and it seemed that everyone had resigned themselves to the fact that the German Shepherd was simply a part of the landscape now, an enigma they couldn't solve. Still, some couldn't help but feel a pull toward the dog, an unspoken desire to reach out, to do something to ease her pain. But every attempt was met with failure. Some tried to lure her with treats, others with kind words, but she never responded. She was a creature of habit now, one who kept her distance. It was during this time that a quiet observer began to take note of the dog's routine. A little girl, new to the town, had seen the dog from afar. Emma, only 6 years old, would ride her bike past the hill each afternoon, always slow enough to catch a glimpse of the lone shepherd. She didn't ask questions or try to interact with the dog. She simply watched, her heart aching with empathy for the creature that had endured so much. While the adults spoke in hushed tones, assuming the dog's story was set in stone, Emma's curiosity grew. There was something in her that believed the dog might not be as unreachable as everyone thought. She didn't know why, but Emma felt a quiet connection, a bond that was waiting to be formed, if only the dog could let go of her fear. Emma had always been a quiet child. Moving to Maple Ridge had been a big change for her, and she wasn't sure how to fit in. The other kids at school were already in their groups, talking about things she didn't quite understand. It was as if they had lived here their whole lives, and Emma was just an outsider, still learning the rhythm of this small town. But one thing that captured her attention in this new place was the mysterious dog on the hill. Every afternoon after finishing her homework and helping her mom with a few chores, Emma would hop on her bike and ride along the winding paths of the town. The gentle breeze in her hair, the leaves crunching beneath her wheels, it was her favorite part of the day. And every day, without fail, she would stop by the hill where the German Shepherd was often seen. She didn't know why, but there was something about the dog that tugged at her heart. Her eyes, those deep, sorrowful eyes, spoke of a pain Emma couldn't understand but felt in her bones. The dog's solitude mirrored Emma's own feelings of being new and out of place. Maybe that's why Emma felt drawn to her. They both understood what it was like to be alone. Emma never approached the dog. She didn't want to frighten her. Instead, she would stop a short distance away, her gaze locked on the shepherd. The dog would always be watching her in return, but there was something about Emma's stillness that seemed to make the German Shepherd hesitate just a little longer each time. Days turned into weeks, and Emma's visits to the hill became a routine. She would ride her bike up the path, slow her pace when she reached the top, and quietly park it beside a tree. With her back against the trunk, she would sit and wait, just waiting for the dog to notice her. She didn't make any loud noises or try to call the dog. She simply sat in the quiet, allowing the dog to come to her on her own terms. On one of these afternoons, the dog was closer than usual. Emma's heart fluttered with excitement, but she remained perfectly still. The German Shepherd had been circling the area for a while, always keeping a cautious distance from the girl. Today, though, she stopped a few feet away, her ears twitching. The dog's eyes, once wide with fear, seemed a little softer, a little more curious. Emma held her breath, knowing that this moment could mean something. She slowly pulled a peanut butter sandwich from her backpack, breaking off a small piece and gently laying it on the ground in front of her. She didn't move. She didn't call out. The sandwich sat there between them, an offering of peace, of friendship. The dog looked at the sandwich, then at Emma. For a long moment, nothing happened. The breeze rustled through the trees, and Emma felt the quiet tension in the air. Then, with a cautious glance over her shoulder, the German Shepherd took a step forward, her nose twitching as she sniffed the food. Emma's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected this. She hadn't expected anything at all. But here was the dog, cautiously exploring the possibility of trust. The following day, Emma arrived at the hill with a sense of quiet anticipation. It was a crisp autumn afternoon, and the leaves were beginning to turn shades of gold and red. The air smelled fresh, full of promise, and Emma felt that something was about to change. She had been visiting the hill every day for weeks now, but today felt different. Today, she could sense that the dog, Luna as Emma had started calling her in her mind, was closer than ever to letting her guard down. As Emma parked her bike by the tree and sat down, her eyes scanned the familiar surroundings. The hill was bathed in the soft light of the setting sun, casting long shadows across the field. For a moment, she saw nothing. The quiet seemed to stretch on, just like all the other days, but there was a subtle tension in the air. She knew Luna was nearby. Then, from the edge of the trees, she saw movement. Luna stepped out slowly, her dark eyes glistening with a cautious curiosity. Emma held her breath, not wanting to startle the dog. Luna's ears were perked, her body tense, but there was something softer in her expression today. She wasn't retreating into the shadows like usual. Instead, she was coming closer. Emma stayed perfectly still, her heart pounding in her chest. She felt a sense of hope rise in her, but she knew better than to rush things. This moment was fragile, and she didn't want to break the delicate trust they had started to build. She didn't reach out, didn't speak. She simply waited, her eyes fixed on the German Shepherd. Luna stopped a few feet away from Emma. She sniffed the air, her tail held low, but not rigid with fear. The distance between them felt smaller than ever before, and Emma couldn't help but smile to herself. She had been patient, and now, it seemed, her quiet determination was paying off. The dog's gaze flickered between the sandwich Emma had placed on the ground and the girl herself. For a moment, Emma thought Luna might turn and run, but the shepherd didn't. Instead, she took a cautious step forward, her nose twitching as she got a little closer to the food. Emma's breath caught in her throat. She had been waiting for this, waiting for Luna to take the first step toward trust. With a slow, deliberate motion, Luna bent her head down to sniff the sandwich. Emma didn't dare move. She wanted this moment to belong to the dog. She wanted Luna to know that it was safe to approach, that Emma wasn't a threat. Luna's ears flicked, and she seemed to hesitate for just a second before finally nibbling at the sandwich. Emma smiled softly, relieved, and full of quiet joy. The dog didn't finish the sandwich, but that wasn't what mattered. What mattered was that Luna had moved closer. She had allowed herself to be vulnerable for a moment. That was progress. Emma knew it was a small step, but it was a step nonetheless, and that was more than she had ever hoped for. Luna raised her head after a few moments, her eyes meeting Emma's. For the first time, Emma didn't feel like an outsider. It was as if, in that brief exchange, the dog had silently acknowledged her presence, acknowledging that not all humans were to be feared. Emma didn't try to approach or speak. She simply stayed still, watching, waiting, hoping that Luna would make the next move on her own terms. And so, they sat in silence together, the wind rustling through the trees and the sun dipping lower in the sky. It was a quiet understanding that passed between them, a moment of peace in a world that had known little of it. Over the next few days, Emma's visits to the hill became a ritual, one that she looked forward to with increasing anticipation. It wasn't just the dog that kept her coming back. It was the quiet understanding they were building, one small moment at a time. Luna, too, seemed to sense that something had shifted. She no longer watched from the farthest edges of the field. Now she appeared closer, lingering in the shadows of the trees or on the outskirts of the grassy hill, her gaze fixed on Emma with a quiet intensity. Each time Emma visited, she repeated the same routine, parking her bike, sitting beneath the old oak tree and waiting. She would bring a sandwich, carefully breaking it into pieces and leaving it on the ground for Luna. Emma had stopped talking to the dog entirely. It wasn't that she didn't want to say something. It was just that she had learned, through each passing day, that words weren't necessary. The trust between them was building in silence, and that silence was more powerful than anything Emma could say. One afternoon, Emma arrived to find Luna already standing at the edge of the hill, watching her from a distance. The wind carried the scent of autumn leaves, and for the first time, Emma didn't feel a sense of nervous anticipation. She felt calm, as though this was just another part of their routine, part of the slow, gentle dance they had been learning together. She sat down in her usual spot, her legs crossed beneath her, and reached into her backpack for the peanut butter sandwich. She broke off a piece and placed it on the ground in front of her, just as she had done so many times before. This time, however, Luna didn't hesitate. The shepherd took a few slow steps forward, her tail twitching behind her. Emma held her breath, careful not to make a sound. The moment was fragile, but it felt different now, like something deeper was beginning to take root. Luna stopped just a few feet away and sniffed the sandwich. Emma could see her body language change. She wasn't as tense as before. Her posture had softened, her tail was low but relaxed, and her ears were forward, no longer flattened against her head. It was subtle, but to Emma, it was a sign that Luna was beginning to trust her. For the first time, Luna lowered her head to the ground and nibbled at the sandwich, taking her time. Emma watched, her heart swelling with emotion. She had hoped for this moment, but seeing it unfold before her felt like a dream. Slowly, carefully, the dog was letting her guard down. After a few moments, Luna stopped eating and sat back on her haunches, her gaze fixed on Emma. They shared a quiet moment, neither one moving. Emma didn't want to rush things, but she couldn't help but feel a connection, an unspoken bond that went beyond words. Luna wasn't just a stray anymore. She wasn't just the abandoned dog of the hill. She was becoming something else. She was becoming a friend. Emma's heart swelled as she realized that this small but powerful breakthrough was more than just sharing a sandwich. It was about the trust that had been built, step by patient step, through the silent afternoons on the hill. They were no longer strangers. Luna had allowed Emma into her world, and Emma had accepted Luna into hers. As the sun began to set, casting a golden light across the field, Emma stayed where she was, her hands resting gently in her lap. Luna didn't leave, nor did she move farther away. She simply sat there, watching Emma with those deep, knowing eyes. As the days went by, the bond between Emma and Luna grew stronger, more natural. Emma could feel the change in the air when she visited the hill. The once tense, anxious silence that had accompanied their meetings had softened. Now there was an understanding between them, a quiet connection built on time, patience, and shared moments of trust. Emma was starting to notice other small changes in Luna's behavior. The dog no longer lingered at the edge of the trees, watching from a distance. Instead, Luna was often waiting near the base of the hill when Emma arrived, her ears perked up and her eyes following Emma's every movement. Sometimes she would be sitting by the tree, just out of reach, looking as if she were contemplating whether she could get closer. Emma could see that Luna wasn't quite ready to make that leap, but the dog was certainly trying to overcome the fear that had once kept her so isolated. One chilly afternoon, the air crisp with the promise of winter, Emma arrived with her usual offering, a small sandwich and a handful of dog treats her mother had helped her prepare. This time, however, Emma had a different idea. She wanted to take the next step. Luna was close, and Emma had a feeling that today might be the day when something truly special happened. She parked her bike by the oak tree, her fingers trembling with excitement as she slowly placed the sandwich on the ground. She kept the treats in her hand, hidden in her palm. Luna was watching her, as usual, but today there was a different look in the dog's eyes, a mix of curiosity and hesitation, as if she was wondering what Emma would do next. "Come here, Luna," Emma whispered, her voice soft but steady. She didn't expect the dog to approach right away, but she had learned that sometimes just a gentle invitation was all it took. Luna's ears flicked toward Emma's voice, and for a moment she seemed to think it over. Then, as if making a decision, Luna took a tentative step forward. She sniffed the sandwich again, but Emma noticed that she was closer than before, much closer than the dog had ever been. The gap between them was shrinking, and that was all the encouragement Emma needed. With a slow movement, Emma extended her hand, holding out the dog treats she had brought. She didn't make any sudden gestures. She simply held her hand open, palm up, offering the treats in a way that didn't seem threatening. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she remained calm, knowing that this was the moment they had both been waiting for. Luna paused for a few seconds, her eyes locked on the treats. Emma didn't say anything more. She let the silence stretch between them, the space filled only with the soft sounds of the wind and the rustle of the trees. Then, to Emma's amazement, Luna took another step closer and sniffed the treats. Her nose brushed Emma's hand, and for the first time, there was no fear in her movement. Luna's warm breath felt gentle against Emma's skin, and Emma's heart soared with joy. The dog wasn't just taking the food, she was allowing herself to be touched, even if only for a brief moment. Luna gingerly nibbled at the treats Emma had offered, her body language relaxed for the first time. Emma couldn't contain her smile. The progress they had made, from the dog avoiding human contact to now accepting her touch, was nothing short of incredible. The world seemed to stand still for a moment as they shared this quiet exchange. Emma knew it wasn't the end, that there would still be more steps to take. But in that moment, it felt like a true breakthrough. The dog had allowed herself to trust Emma, and Emma, in turn, had given Luna a piece of her heart that she would never take back. As the days turned into weeks, Emma and Luna's connection blossomed into something unspoken yet profound. With each visit, Emma noticed more subtle changes in Luna, changes that weren't just about the dog's trust in her, but also in herself. Luna was becoming less the broken, fearful animal that had once roamed the hills alone, and more like a companion. She was beginning to recognize the possibility of safety, of kindness, and of belonging. One late afternoon, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, Emma arrived at the hill, as she did every day. She had been bringing Luna her usual treats, but today Emma had something special in mind. After weeks of building trust and patiently waiting, she felt it was time to try something more. This time, Emma brought a small leash with her, one her mother had given her in case she ever needed it. Emma wasn't sure if Luna would be ready for it, but she had been thinking a lot about how much further their bond could go. She felt confident that Luna was ready for the next step, if only Luna trusted her enough to accept it. Emma sat beneath the oak tree, her hands shaking slightly as she unrolled the leash and laid it beside her. Luna, as usual, appeared in the distance, coming from the trees and carefully stepping into the open. Her eyes, always cautious but not as fearful as they had once been, scanned the area before they found Emma. They locked eyes for a brief moment, and in that instant, Emma could feel the bond they had created between them. "Come on, Luna," Emma whispered, as she had done so many times before, only this time with the added hope of something more. "You can do it." Luna didn't hesitate. Her steps were slow, but they were purposeful. She moved toward Emma, her tail low, but no longer stiff with fear. As she came closer, Emma held out her hand, palm open, just as she had done before. Luna's nose twitched, and then, without warning, the dog moved closer and nudged her nose into Emma's palm, allowing her to pet her gently for a few seconds. Emma's heart fluttered with excitement. It felt as though everything they had worked for was culminating in this moment, the quiet patience, the understanding that had grown between them. But this time, there was more. With a deep breath, Emma slowly picked up the leash. She extended it toward Luna, her hand steady despite the fluttering excitement in her chest. Luna looked down at it for a moment, her body tense, but not with fear, more like she was assessing the situation. Emma, knowing that this moment was fragile, held her breath. And then, after what felt like an eternity, Luna took a step forward and nudged her nose toward the leash. Emma smiled softly, her hands trembling with relief and joy. Gently, she slipped the loop of the leash over Luna's head, her movements slow and deliberate, mindful not to rush or startle her. For the first time, Luna wore a collar and leash, not as a sign of control, but as a symbol of their bond. Luna stood still for a moment, her gaze meeting Emma's. There was a calm in the dog's eyes, a look that spoke of acceptance, of understanding. They were no longer strangers, nor were they merely acquaintances. They had become something more, partners in a quiet journey toward healing, toward a new beginning. Emma stood up slowly, taking the leash in her hand. She gave it a gentle tug, just to see how Luna would respond. The dog followed her without hesitation, taking her first steps alongside Emma, walking with her in a way she never had before. Emma's heart swelled with pride. For the first time, Luna wasn't just a stray, roaming the hills alone. She was walking beside someone who cared for her, someone who had patiently helped her find her way back to trust. And Emma wasn't just a lonely child anymore. She had found a friend, a companion who understood the power of silence, of waiting, and of hope. As they walked together toward the tree line, the sun dipping lower, Emma knew that this was only the beginning. The journey they had started was far from over, but they had already come so far. Together, they had taken the first steps toward a future of healing and companionship, a future full of possibility. The days that followed felt like a new chapter for both Emma and Luna. With the leash now part of their routine, Emma began taking Luna on short walks around the hill. At first, Luna was a bit unsure, but each day she seemed to grow more confident. The leash wasn't just a tool, it was a symbol of the trust they had cultivated together. Emma knew it was still a slow journey. Luna wasn't entirely comfortable around other people yet, and there were moments when the dog's old fear resurfaced. But they took things one step at a time, as they always had. One afternoon, as Emma and Luna walked the familiar path, they were stopped by a neighbor. Mrs. Turner, an older woman with kind eyes and a soft voice, had been watching their progress from her porch for some time. She had noticed the dog on the hill before, but now, seeing Emma and Luna walking together with ease, she smiled warmly and approached them. "Looks like you two have become quite the pair," Mrs. Turner remarked, her eyes twinkling with a mix of amusement and approval. "That's a beautiful dog you've got there. Is she a stray?" Emma nodded, a smile tugging at her lips. "Her name's Luna. She's been living on the hill for a while. I've been trying to help her feel safe." Mrs. Turner bent down slightly, her gentle gaze on Luna, who, despite her past fears, didn't shy away this time. She stood still, watching the woman with curiosity. There was no trace of the fearful, elusive dog Emma had first encountered. Luna was beginning to trust people again, slowly but surely. "Well, I must say, you've done a wonderful job," Mrs. Turner said, her voice soft. "She looks like a different dog now. But it might be time for her to have a real home. She's ready for that." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She had thought about it, of course. What if Luna could come home with her? What if Luna didn't have to live alone on the hill anymore? But Emma didn't want to push the dog too quickly. She didn't want to make her feel trapped, or as if she were being forced into something she wasn't ready for. But Mrs. Turner's words made Emma realize something important. Luna was ready. She had been for some time now. And maybe, just maybe, Emma was ready for that too. "Do you think she could stay with us?" Emma asked softly, her voice filled with hope. Mrs. Turner smiled warmly. "I think that's exactly what she needs. But I can see you're already her home, Emma. Just make sure she knows she's safe." With Mrs. Turner's encouragement, Emma knew it was time. That afternoon, she walked back home with Luna, her hand on the dog's leash. For the first time, Luna wasn't just following. She was walking alongside Emma, confidently, with a sense of belonging. When they reached the house, Emma's mom was waiting on the porch, her eyes lighting up when she saw them together. "Look at you two," her mom said, kneeling down to greet Luna. "I think she's found a place with us, hasn't she?" Luna, after a brief moment of hesitation, walked up to Emma's mom and nuzzled her hand, accepting the love she had long been denied. The dog's once guarded eyes now seemed full of warmth, and Emma could see how much Luna had grown in such a short time. From that day forward, Luna was part of Emma's family. No longer the lonely dog on the hill, Luna had found her place in a home full of love and care. She spent her days running through the backyard, playing fetch with Emma, and curling up beside her at night. The house was quieter now, but it was a peaceful kind of quiet, one that was full of comfort, routine, and the kind of healing that only time and trust could bring. As for Emma, she had gained more than just a dog. She had found a true companion, someone who understood the meaning of patience, the value of silence, and the incredible power of trust. Together, they had written their own story, one of healing, friendship, and the quiet strength that comes when two hearts learn to understand one another. And from that day on, Emma and Luna were never alone again.